Hello everyone, MCon here with another episode of our Dragon Age 2 Let's Play. This is going to be a slightly different Let's Play episode, as I have gone through our spare room over here and kind of just cleaned out all the contents of the items and such that we possessed. So there is a huge backlog of codex entries now. So I'm going to devote this episode to simply reading off some of the histories and codex entries of all these items. So that's what we're going to be doing for this one. So the long trek. Malcolm would never tell his wife or young children where he was from. It was a bloody tale that forever gave him nightmares. When their love was still fresh, Leandro once pressed him on the subject. All he would say is, "Freedom's price is never cheap." But that was 100 leagues and a lifetime ago. His haunted gaze lingered on his favorite boots, and he would say no more. The fugitive's mantle. Malcolm Hawke ranged the breadth of the free marches as he ran from the Templars who pursued him. He often posed as a mercenary, and his substantial martial skills easily secured him positions in different bands. On one assignment for the Crimson Oars, he was sent to Kirkwall, the seat of Templar power in the region. He had every intention of staying there briefly, but fate had other plans. Malcolm's bequest. In Kirkwall, Malcolm met Leandra and, despite all common sense, courted her. The few times Leandra managed to slip away from her family, Malcolm showed her a whole new world, something completely different from her cloistered existence. It was dangerous, forbidden, and she quickly fell madly in love with the dashing Malcolm Hawke. These stolen moments would end all too soon. One day, while fighting the Carta on the docks, Malcolm used magic to save the life of the Crimson Oars leader. The Kirkwall Templars were alerted, but Malcolm wouldn't flee the city without seeing his love one last time. He devised to meet her at the masked ball for the visiting Orlesian Empress. Oh wow, this sounds cool. Disguised in Orlesian robes, Malcolm slipped past the Templars to dance with his love. At the end of the night, Leandro would not hear his goodbyes and chanced at happiness rather than face her gray, prearranged future. Malcolm and Leandra ran into the night and never looked back. Malcolm's honor. Malcolm and Leandra fled across the waking sea to a new life away from the cold shadow of the gallows. It took some doing, but the vastness of Ferelden allowed them to fall beneath the notice of their Templar pursuers. They settled in the small village of Lothering, where Malcolm made every effort to ensure that his children didn't fear magic, and were well insulated against those who did. Malcolm had picked up a trick or two, here and there, and his deceptively simple staff shows the breadth of his knowledge. More an ongoing project than a specialist tool. It is the handiwork of someone comfortable with the life he must live, for as long as he was granted the opportunity to live it. Aldenon's vestments. To all appearances, he was a hedge wizard hailing from the Frostbacks, perhaps Alamari, but from the wildlands if so. Venerable, certainly worthy of respect, but not commanding it. When he stormed into my master's feast hall and offered his service in a resounding voice, there was laughter at his audacity. Several bondsmen offered to remove the miscreant, but before they could grab him, the mage lifted his staff, and the bondsmen fell to the ground. Each time they stood, they slipped again, and their antics were met with laughter. Arl Tenador the Elder, who was not long for this world, demanded to know who this arrogant invader was. "I am the beginning and the end. I am the Luckbinder, Spellweaver, and the Keeper of Secrets, and I am here to build a kingdom. I am Aldenon the Wise, and if you haven't heard of me yet, never can you say the same again." His voice boomed, silencing all. His magic was potent, and the hall gave him a wary look. Tenador accepted him as his advisor that day. Then, when Tenador the Younger rose to his father's seat, he took Aldenon into service as well. I sat with the mage in many councils, and although his magecraft was greater than even the Tevinter magisters, many believed his advice to be folly. He had little appreciation for the hard truths of our lands, they said. Compassion, mercy, justice, they matter not when Terran Simeon invades your land, subverts your nobles, and takes what's yours. He grew bitter and impatient with us in ours, and these sentiments were often returned. But others could see he had a vision of something better than the endless petty wars of Terrans and Arls. When Arl Mirrodin besieged us, a youth named Calenhad was sent to meet the Asp, but all expected a treacherous end. Yet the boy returned to great acclaim and announced there would be no terms. Algernon was taken with the foolhardy honor the boy displayed, and seemed to awaken from a dark dream. The mage told Tenedor the younger he would lend his aid for the battle, but after that he would serve another. Tenedor accepted his resignation with relief more than anything. By the end of the siege of the Western Hill, Arl Tenedor was no more. It was Calenhad who defeated Mirrodin in single combat, and he became Terran Calenhad. Algernon was named his chief advisor, from the recollections of Sir Devith, Banner Knight of King Calenhad. Freedom's Promise. As Calenhad grew into a man, one great conscientious issue separated him from Algernon, Calenhad's faith. As biddable as Calenhad was on some topics, never would he back down from matters of honor or Andraste. What Algernon believed, only Algernon knew, but he most certainly did not believe in the Maker. The friends' arguments grew only hotter as the years passed. But that aside, the union of Calenhad's peerless honor and Aldernon's ingenuity overcame every obstacle set before them. Rivals turned into friends, treacheries were uncovered, and impossible battles won. But as we turned to Terran Simeon, no one rested easy. Terran Simeon's host outnumbered us many times over. He controlled the holy city of Denerim. Many great and terrible warriors had sworn him fealty. Algernon conceived a plan to enlist the strong... I've lost it. Here we go. Algernon conceived a plan to enlist strong allies, and Calenhad went into the Brazilian forest to make it so. But unbeknownst to the mage, Calenhad had made contact with the Chantry. When Calenhad returned to the head of the Ash Warriors, as Algernon expected, so as well did Templars and Circle Mages join our host. Algernon was in a fury such as I've never seen. He wanted a kingdom of free men, of moral people beholden to law, where a common man could tend his land safely and in peace. He lifted his staff and his voice echoed throughout the hills. A civilization cannot be civil if it condones the slavery of another. And that is what this circle is. But by accident of birth those mages would be free to live, love, and die as they choose. The circles will break, if it be 1 year, a decade, a century, or beyond. Tyrants always fall, and the downtrodden always strive for freedom. Then Algernon left, and although Lady Shayna slew Simeon that day, and Calenhad ruled a united kingdom, my liege was not the same without his mentor and friend. We live in the kingdom built on the dreams of two great friends, and we are all lessened by Aldernon's departure. Interesting. Robes of the Pretender. As the Chantry's hold on the kingdom grew, and Aldernon's rebel mages were claimed one by one, the great Calenhad came to regret letting the circle form in his kingdom. Certainly he missed his old friend's counsel. And then Calenhad disappeared, leaving crowning kingdom to his unborn son. One story says he tracked down Marterel the Elusive, the only one of Aldernon's apprentices who was never captured. Calenhad managed what the Templars could not and found the mage. He asked Marterel where Algernon had fled to, but Marterel refused him. The next night the king asked again, and was again refused, so he began to tell Marterel his whole life story. After a full week, the king reached the end of his tale, and Marterel heard the regret in the king's words. So the mage broke his solemn vow and told Calenhad where his old master had gone. Calenhad thanked him and left to find his truest friend. Whether Calenhad ever found Algernon, what they said, and whether they made amends, only the Maker knows. But that's the last anyone ever saw our king. From a story told and retold many times by apprentices in the Circle Tower of Ferelden. Wisdom's Eye. Although his vestments are legendary, Algernon also weaved many subtle and potent enchantments into his cap during the years he fought against the Circle Tower of Ferelden. He claimed he could use Wisdom's Eye to even see the future. Certainly, the innumerable times he and the other rebel mages escaped Templars lend some credence to the claim. When Aldernon's band numbered fewer than the fingers of one hand, he donned his hat and meditated a full day. When he awoke, he said the Maker and the Circle had won, and he bade his apprentices run. He was never heard from again. Alright. Longbow of the Avars. We investigated the area as per your instructions. It seems Warden Fiona is correct. It was once a dwarven fortress that one of our scouts called Kulbaras. Regardless, it has fallen to ruin and the taint now. Despite Fiona's description, there were no darkspawn to be found. If they were ever present, they have since moved on, which, if you ask me, seems highly unlikely. Her tales of this darkspawn who speaks must be a product of a fevered imagination. Oh, interesting. Interesting. Darkspawn who speaks, like the architect. Okay. Wait, wasn't Fiona that dwarf that the architect was working with? The Grey Warden? Oh, that's... I don't know. Okay, let's keep going. There are no signs of a library in the fortress, nor any indication that the Grey Wardens or King Merrick were there at all. One of my men did, however, find something in a section of the deep roads not far away. A longbow of Avar origin, amid darkspawn corpses, the age being hard to judge, considering how the creatures deteriorate. I suspect the bow belonged to Kel ap Morgan, the warden who sacrificed himself to facilitate Fiona's escape. If so, he put up an impressive fight. We found no evidence of his body, sadly. I shall send the bow to you and Weishaupt. From a letter found on the body of a courier killed by bandits in the Anderfells in 920 Dragon. So that would put it around the right time frame. 920 Dragon could have been right after or during or after the events, or maybe even just before the events of Awakening. That's the word I was looking for. Could not think of it for the longest time. Bard's Honor. A curious thing, Perrin. I found the axe among Kaelin's belongings, wrapped in damask cloth, and initially I thought it might be another gift from that Orlesian harlot. It was a pretty enough thing, and the markings on the blade certainly seemed imperial. I even went so far as to confront Kaelin with it, and do you know what he said? The axe was of personal importance to his father. So why wasn't it buried with his ashes, I asked. Because my mother wouldn't have approved. I wondered if he was lying, but Kaelin's terrible at it. I did some digging, and are you aware that there was an elven woman seen in Mark's company shortly before the Battle of River Dane? There was a rumor, I understand, that they were lovers, and that she was a bard. Was Marek being blackmailed? I wonder if this has anything to do with that mysterious bequeathment to those elven families in Orlais. Of course, I had Kaelin dispose of the axe immediately. From a letter written by Queen Honora of Ferelden, 927 Dragon. Okay, so if that was written in 927 Dragon, the Queen Honora wrote that, and she's talking about actually talking to Kaelin. So the events of Dragon Age Origins was after 927 Dragon. It might have been like 930 or something. The longbow was found in 920 Dragon. Fiona, a Grey Warden, apparently was talking of a Darkspawn who speaks at that time. Interesting. Arms of the River Dane. The Battle of River Dane is among the most famous in Ferelden's history, fought at the onset of the Dragon Age in a bid to secure the country's independence from Orlesian rule. The Ferelden army was cobbled together from commoners and bands who had turned against the Orlesian usurper, King Maegrin. Even so, under the leadership of Loghain MacTyr, they scored an astounding victory against a large force of chevaliers fording the River Dane. Afterwards, Loghain was hailed as a Ferelden legend, and for a time veterans of the battle enjoyed similar status. The soldiers' possessions became prized mementos, in particular the suits of armor belonging to those early supporters who joined Merrick after the death of his mother, Moira, the rebel queen. Folktales suggest that the Maker's blessing lives on in the armor those brave allies wore on that fateful day. Oh, okay. Now we know more about Fiona. Fiona. Duncan became Ferelden's Commander of the Grey in 910 Dragon, assuming the mantle from Commander Pollara, under whom he had served since the Order's restoration in Ferelden. Pollara, who hailed from Antiva, had built an amiable relationship with King Kaelin. She overcame many of the objections of Teyrn Loghain, who had argued strenuously against the Order returning. After all, the Wardens had attempted to overthrow the Ferelden throne centuries before. That's true, as we saw in the Soldier's Peak DLC. When Polara disappeared, perhaps recalled to Weishaupt, although none in Ferelden saw her leave, nor have seen her since, Duncan bequeathed to her son a silverite axe of great value. Duncan said he had wielded it and a twin in younger days, back when he had been a far different man. He named the axe Fiona after a warden who inspired him, and suggested that the son ought to take similar inspiration from his mother. It's unknown what became of Polara's son, other than that he fled Ferelden during the same blight in which Duncan perished. Arms of Mechtir. Loghain Mechtir was not born a nobleman. It's said his family descended from freeholders in the western Bannorn, a region known as Oswin. His father, Gareth, would have had no surname of his own. He likely would only have described himself as of Oswin, or Ban Aishwin, as the region would have been known in the Old Tongue. The name Mechtir means son of the land. It was bestowed upon Loghain by King Marek after the Battle of River Dane. The Ferelden people considered the name highly appropriate. To them, Teyrn Loghain was a son of the entire nation, and he was famously said to have told a crowd that Ferelden would forever be part of his blood. After Loghain's betrayal of King Caelan at Ostagar in 930 Dragon, there we go, I was right, 930 Dragon, the general became as reviled as he had once been revered. His manse in Gwarin was looted, and many of his personal possessions stolen, among them the armor he wore at the Battle of River Dane. That armor is said to have had special significance to the man. One peculiarity of the armor was a square of red silk pinned to one of the shoulder belts. For luck, Loghain once explained. Okay. King Marek's Helm. King Marek Therin, widely regarded as a hero by the Ferelden people for liberating the country from Orlesian rule, disappeared at sea while en route to Wycombe in 925 Dragon. He was to attend a gathering of the Marcher Lords in an attempt to forge a union in the north, and when he failed to appear, the Free Marches fell back into the petty squabbling that they are infamous for. Teyrn Loghain spent almost 2 years searching for his lost friend, consuming much of the royal treasury and the majority of the Ferelden navy. The search was futile, and when Loghain claimed that Orlais had purposefully sunk King Marek's vessel in order to prevent Marcher unity, he was called off by his daughter Queen Anora and a united Bannorn. It was time to mourn the king, they said, and so in 927 Dragon, a massive state funeral was held in Denerim's Chantry. Okay. To this day, rumors insist that Marek is still alive, perhaps held in an Orlesian prison somewhere. The lasting mystique has increased the value of his personal possessions, leading to the theft of several artifacts from the royal palace. Whoops. Among these was the helmet said to have been worn by a young Marek at the disastrous Battle of West Hill. The Black Fox's Jerkin. During the merriest part of the night in any tavern in the lands, odds are good that you'll hear one of the many tales of the Black Fox. A scoundrel and a hero, the Black Fox's misadventures took him and his band throughout Thedas. He's blamed for many thefts, a few murders, a revolution, and almost a kingdom-wide civil war. But every one of his deeds were designed to thwart tyranny and oppression. The final tale of the Black Fox tells of him and his band searching for the sunken city of the Elves deep in the forest of Arlathan, where he parted with his jerkin in a less than voluntary manner. Okay. Hood's message to the king. He wields a rebel bow, strung tight against heartwood strained too far. It's a tension that can't last, but it doesn't have to, for the cause must be won or lost while passions still burn. It's a powerful template for revolution, repeated many times across the free marches. But was it born on a battlefield or in rhetoric? The message to the king is where the stories usually diverge. Sometimes it's a plea for liberty taken to a tyrant's heart by the point of an arrow. More often it's carried in the clatter of sacrifice as weapons fall to a courtyard's cobbles. It depends on the audience. The young like their victories sudden and violent, while the old prefer something more cautionary. It may be that Hood is not so much a person as a tactic, ushered to far horizons or the grave's embrace in order to protect conspirators. After all, how many deaths can he claim when one is the typical limit for a common man? But the tales return time and again across leagues and centuries. At a certain point, one hopes the name is symbolic, because allying with such a power would bring its own problems and doubts. From Rebels of the Marches, Allegory and Rebellion, forward by Philium a Bard. And there's still more to go! Jarvia's Shank. When the Carta crime boss Berat fell, his lover Jarvia fought off rivals, planting this shank in each of their hearts before she emerged as the group's undisputed leader. For years, Jarvia used a mix of brutality, cunning, and blackmail to grow the Carta's power until it threatened the Diamond Quarter itself. Interesting, because we faced off with Jarvia. When King Endrin Iduken died, some whispered that Jarvia planned to force the Assembly to recognize the rights of Dusters and Orzammar. Others said she planned to overthrow the nobles entirely. The truth will never be known, though. She was killed in cold blood by the hero of Ferelden. Cool. The Lion's Claws. Foiled at every turn by the infamous outlaw Lady Rosamund, the ever-persistent Taryn Loghain fielded an army to chase the bandit through the Korcari wilds. Eventually, she was captured near Barchamp. Bound, gagged, and in chains, she still managed to escape on the first night using thieves' tools concealed in these gloves. To this day, there is an unclaimed bounty on her head of 1,000 sovereigns. The Rascal's Scale by Coinhart. Strangest suit I ever made? The scale for that fool Rascal. No second thought needed. A project I wanted to try for years. Obvious given my name, right? But I could never find a fool to wear his wealth as protection. This one, though, was daft as any surfacer, and was paying 2 coins for each that I hammered, and that buys a smile and a nod for any idiot. I guess he's something of a name in his own lands, this Rascal, so I can't really question, and I did him my best, like always. Damned lyrium weave left my fingers numb, though. No sword will get through that, I guarantee, but I'll bet his children are born pale. From Tales of the Craft, Masters in Their Own Words, a record of Dwarven Smithwork Guild archived. Neat. The Archon's Blades. The Archon's Guard of Hassarian are vilified throughout the lands. The chant depicts their cruel treatment of Andraste as one of the reasons the Maker turned his gaze from his creation. After Hassarian converted to Andraste's teachings, he disbanded his guard and stripped them of their arms. Most of the guard's swords were destroyed, but a handful of the Archon's blades are still around. Perhaps one of the blades here drew the prophet's blood as the Archon interrogated Andraste before her execution. Beregrand the Bold. Beregrand the Bold was either a hero or a traitor, depending on how you look at it. Before exile was common among the dwarves, only the most heinous crimes warranted a dwarf being stripped of house and sent to the surface. Beregrand qualified and was banished on accusations of regicide after killing a dwarven king on the Proving Sands. Beregrand spat on the assembly that pronounced his sentence before strapping on his armor and leaving Gundar. Living on the surface, Beregrand's incredible fighting skills, tactical knowledge, and intellect built a naval empire centered in what would one day be Antiva. His more enduring legacy was teaching human smiths, engineers, and other crafters jealously guarded dwarven secrets. Cursed by dwarves and hailed by humans, Beregrand became a figure of much controversy. As complicated as his life was, the story of Beregrand's armor is even more checkered. His armor has passed throughout many heroes over the centuries. Despite the advantages it gave them, no hero using it ever survived to old age. Yeah, that's a typical thing of heroes. Hey, the end's in sight, guys! The Edge of Night. You've never seen a lad so taken with an axe. He carried one of the old sodding things with him wherever he went. Practicing day and night, he drove his mother to distraction, he did. Even when he was fully raised into the warrior caste, he refused proper weapons. Said he had the feel of an axe, and that's all he needed. Over the years, he spent a small fortune having smiths layer enchantments on him. Oh, how others would sneer at those ancient things. Well, they did until Beregrand lopped off King Jegrit's head on the sands. Sad business, that, and Gundar was the poorer for it. And I'm not just talking about the king. From the Memories of Gundar, a collection of stories preserved by the Shaperate of the Lost Dwarven Kingdom. The Empress's Point. As one of the early rulers, let's start that over again. As one the early rulers of contemporary Orlais, no wonder I was having troubles. This is another typo. As one of the early rulers of contemporary Orlais, Genevieve, Empress Genevieve I, created many of the traditions and practices of the imperial court. She employed the bravest and most skilled swordsman to her guard, the Empress's arm, one of the main predecessors of the Chevaliers. Her guards were given a princely gift, an enchanted Tevinter blade. These blades were named for the Empress's darker side. When rivals overstepped their bounds, Genevieve was always quick to make them see her point. It's a pun. The Golden Prince's raiment. Tales of Emile Devereaux flourish among the Orlesian peasants. The dashing Golden Prince was a populist who raised a huge army from his common subjects by promising reform for the aging empire. Although he never won his imperial coronet, Lord Emile captured the hearts and minds of generations of Orlesian dreamers while wearing his golden armor. It is said that, as a young girl, even Empress Celeste was captivated by his stories. The Ashen Cuirass. The charge of the Ash Warriors is a sight to behold. With hounds at their side and their fierce battle cries, the Ash Warriors have buckled the ranks of even stalwart veterans. And if the enemy line does hold, then the true test begins. Quill and ink is a poor medium to convey the sheer power of their rages. Despite the Ash Warriors' renown, several misconceptions persist. Some believe the mercenaries are predominantly Avar or chastened tribesmen. Certainly their armor evokes barbarian roots, but the men and women of the Ash Warriors are almost entirely civilized. In my travels as chronicler and surgeon, I spent several months with the Ash Warriors, although finding any willing to speak of their history was difficult. The stories I gradually elicited were chilling tales of hard men. One was an arsonist who joined the Ash Warriors on the gallows. Another had committed fratricide, and another's dire past I dare not recount. In joining the Ash Warriors, their crimes were forgiven, for it was as if they were never born. Even in legal records, their old life is erased. Contracts voided, marriages annulled, records of birth erased. In this, they are much like the Dwarven Legion of the Dead. Their new lives are dedicated to redemption and service. My first night with the band, I was startled when they asked me to sing a few verses from the Chant of Light. Grim to a man and fearsomely garbed, yet they were as eager to hear the chant as the most faithful parishioner. Blech. I felt as the first missionaries must have, surrounded by barbarians. The more I learned of the Ash Warriors, the more questions I had. They are mercenaries who demand no pay, men with no pasts, considered the king's men, yet beholden to no one. I could have traveled with them for many years, and still had mysteries to uncover. From Annals of the Scarlet March by Brother Badine, Chantry Scholar. The Dogs of War. And then Velcorminth swung his mighty hammer, and the blow tore the Alamari band's head clean off. He lay crumpled beneath the war leader, and Velcorminth did shout, "You canine lovers, you who think you can defeat me, stand before me and my dogs. They are the dogs of war." He planted his blood-soaked hammer in the earth, and his enemies did quiver. But victory would not go to the chastened that day, for Hafter approached and intoned, "I am Hafter, slayer of the Darkspawn, leader of the Alamari. No dog nor wolf alive frightens me." And so they traded blows for 3 days and 3 nights. Bruised, bloodied, and tired they grew. It was after 1,000 blows that Hafter's blade, Ysaris, found Velcorminth's heart. Then Hafter spoke, "I banished the chastened from these plains. I have taken the greatest of your men from you, and claimed his weapon as my own. If ever you rise against me or my sons, we will take more than that." And so to this very day, the chastened never venture far from their wilds, and the children of Hafter still hold our lands free. From Tales of the Alamari, author unknown. Hauberk of Gelgenig. Hauberk of Gelgenig the Faithful. Not all of the Alamari tribes flocked to Andraste. Especially on the borders of the Korkari wilds, her words found scant purchase. Decades after her death, many Alamari held true to the gods of their ancestors. Missionaries braved these hard lands only to become martyrs of the faith. And so it was until the Alamari were embroiled in a bitter war for survival against the Chastened and Navars, when the leader of the Ash Warriors, Gelgenig, received a vision of Andraste. The charismatic barbarian traveled throughout Ferelden, telling his tale and unifying the fractious bands around the word of the Maker. The Ash Warriors ever since have been fervent in their faith to the Maker. To the Ash Warriors, Gelgenig's armor is a religious relic, but it was lost in the Navaran campaign of 869 Blessed, so almost 100 years ago. The Mountain Fathers Haft. The Frostbacks run red with the barbarian blood. We've found their sacred caves and claimed their most holy relics. When the soldiers came out of the mountain cave and brandished the weapon, the Avars rose up in a mighty furor. We had to put down every man, woman, and child. It was as if they'd gone rabid. Before they perished, their witchwoman pronounced a curse so vile and treasonous, 3 soldiers had to be whipped to reestablish discipline. Our guide says this axe is a sacred weapon, a weapon of the gods. We plan to march further into the mountains to defeat the last of the tribes. Surely there cannot be more than 1,000 left. I have every confidence that by next spring these barbarians will plague us no more. Then we can turn our attention fully to the Chastened and the Alamari. Although this axe may look crude, I assure you that it is of enormous importance to these backwards people. Consider it the first spoils of many. Last letter to Magister Talerio from the first Tevinter expedition against the Avars, 483 TE. And finally, Willem's Bulwark. From the fair and deadly Lady Shana to his faithful squire, Ser Tillers, much is known of the companions of Calenhad, the first king of united Ferelden, but seldom do bards recount tales of Willem Halfir and the Ash Warriors. While noble Calenhad was trying to assemble a nation, he found himself greatly outnumbered by Terran Simeon's forces. It seemed a foregone conclusion that Calenhad would fall, but on the advice of Aldanon the Wise, Calenhad ventured deep into the Brazilian forest in search of allies. Those woods have a fearsome reputation, and after a fortnight of waiting for their liege to re-emerge, his men lost hope. And then Calenhad returned with Willem Halfir by his side and the Ash Warriors behind him. Although the Ash Warriors' numbers were relatively few, they turned the tide in the Battle of the White Valley. Halfir and his men breached the enemy's van. Van? Maybe Vanguard? I don't know. Allowing Calenhad and Lady Shana to kill Terran Simeon and unite the land. Sitting at the Ash Warriors' campfire, listening to them tell of the prowess of William Halfir, it has become clear to me that this role in the formation of our kingdom is greatly underestimated. From the Annals of the Scarlet March by Brother Badin, Chantry Scholar. And that is all of the items. Yep, we're gonna leave that stuff alone. We read about the Anderfels, the Alienage, we know about the Orlesian Empire, Sundermount, Wounded Coast. Oh, goodness. That's... yeah, we know those guys. I know we read all those. Oh, whew. Well, that's gonna be it for now, because my voice is beat, guys. Well, thank you for coming along for this little lore episode with me. And, hey, until next time, guys, bye all.